Yes, Sandy, I can hear you. Can you
Thank
hear
you
me?
very much, and the floor is yours. I'll leave the stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for a very inspiring first half. And thank you to all the speakers that were here. And also, of course, to the audience watching from all over the world from their homes. Welcome back on behalf of myself and on behalf of Olga. Olga, maybe you can quickly say hi.
Yes, hi.
Oh, yes. So my name is Laura, and I hope you had a good break. As Sandy said, Olga and I will guide you through the second half of this symposium, which includes the panel discussion and the final Q&A, where you can ask all your questions that weren't asked yet. Maybe I can provide a little bit of background. So Olga and I are both PhD candidates, myself at Utrecht University, and Olga works at the University of Rotterdam. And also, we are both co-founders of the platform Groei on degrowth in the Netherlands. Okay, so let's continue with the second half of this online symposium. After an inspiring first half that provided the background of what a circular society may look like, we will now turn to 3 inspiring initiatives that show that a circular society is not only possible, but is actually already here. And before I will introduce the 3 speakers, let us have a brief look at the poll that was sent just before the break. And interestingly enough, most people actually think that degrowth principles can easily be implemented in their personal life. About 85% actually voted yes. However, only half of the people think that they can be implemented in their work, but another 46% actually says that they want to apply them in their work. Well, on that note, I would like to welcome our 3 panelists. A question to the panelists: when I mention your name, could you turn on your camera and wave so that the audience knows who you are? So let me introduce the first panelist, Martine Postma. So Martine is the founder and director of Repair Café International, a worldwide movement which she started in 2009. Our second panelist is Joey Hodde, co-founder of Café de Keuvel and housing corporation De Warre in Amsterdam. And finally, we are also happy to have Socrates with us today. And Socrates works at the Waag and is author of the book The Circulaire Economie, the circular economy. So all 3 panelists will shortly introduce their own initiatives and their motivations for working on a circular society. This is also a brief reminder to the audience that they can already post their questions to the panelists in the Q&A, but that we will only answer them in the final Q&A of this symposium. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our first panelist, Martine Postma.
Thank you, Laura. I'll now share my screen. Yes, there we are. So wonderful to be here and great to be on this panel. My name is Martine Postma and I'm founder of Repair Café International Foundation. And I'm happy for the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about our work, which is all about promoting a more circular lifestyle. Just very briefly, I think you're all familiar with Repair Café. It's a concept that I created 10 years ago to bring repairing back into our daily lives. A Repair Café is a place where you can go with any broken item and where expert repair volunteers from your community can help you to repair them. I started this because I'm concerned about the huge amounts of waste that we create on a daily basis and about the carelessness with which we throw things away that could easily be fixed and used for longer. And by doing so, we use way too much of our natural resources and way too much energy getting rid of all this waste and producing new stuff, and we contribute to climate change because of the CO2 emissions involved in all this. Luckily, I'm not the only one who worries about this. There are people all around the world who want to do something about it, and Repair Café International supports these people. We help them to start their own Repair Café, and we provide a digital starter kit which tells you how to do that. And we put all Repair Cafés on the map, on the world map, so that the continuous growth of the network becomes visible. As you can see, at this moment, there are over 2,000 Repair Cafés worldwide. An average Repair Café has 1 meeting per month, at which an average of 25 repairs are carried out. That means that every month over 2,000 Repair Café meetings are being held and over 50,000 products are being examined. And one of the things that we do to promote circularity is to enable our volunteer repairers worldwide to collect data about these repairs. And this data is shared among the network of repairers so that they can learn from each other and benefit from each other's findings. And this improves the chances of successful repairs at repair cafes. For this goal, we created the Repair Monitor. It's an online tool which Repair Café volunteers can use to register their repair data. They can indicate what kind of product they repair, which brands, what's wrong with the products, if the repair succeeded, etc., etc. So they can give a lot of information about each repair. And this system now contains more than 30,000 repairs, and every Repair Café can download the entire data set so that they can learn from the other repairers' experience. And at the Repair Café Foundation, we regularly analyze the data set to draw overall conclusions. And these conclusions can be used as evidence in our plea for more repairable products that fit into the circular economy. Last week, we published a report on the data entered into the monitor last year. This report is on our website, repaircafe.org/en. This is the link to the article. It contains a lot of information about popular products, popular brands, reparability of specific brands, obstacles to repair, etc. To give you an idea, this is a top 10 of barriers that repairers mentioned when a repair did not or not completely succeed. You can see that the non-availability of spare parts is the most mentioned reason. And this is valuable information that can be used in our plea for more repairable products. And another thing that we do to promote circularity is to provide materials for organizing repair lessons at primary schools. For we've noticed that people nowadays have absolutely no idea about repairing at all. They have no skills, no tools, nothing. And we believe that in a circular society, repair skills should be part of everyone's basic skill set. And that's why we think that they should be taught at school. So that's us for now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Martine. That was very interesting and also very good to see how you related to the circular society and the position that the Repair Café actually has as a worldwide movement in going towards this circular society. I will quickly move to the second panelist. Joey, I can give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you. Am I, okay, I'll quickly share my screen as well. Share. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for participating. My name is Joey Hodde. I am co-founder of Café de Keuvel and co-founder and board member of housing cooperation De Warre. And I will quickly tell about the projects I've been involved in for the past years. So it all starts with De Keuvel. De Keuvel used to be a ship wharf in the north of Amsterdam until the municipality closed off the canal and the piece of land became a barren piece of land. Then there were all these kind of plans to develop the barren piece of land into a really shiny boulevard with big residential towers and penthouses going away for over €1 million. But then in 2007 and 2008, the crisis hit, and all of a sudden, all the project developers didn't have the money anymore to develop the piece of land. So what the municipality then did was they set out a tender, a price question, basically stating whoever can think of something to do with the piece of land can do it for 10 years, but mind you, the soil is so heavily polluted that you can't dig. Which is a really big problem if you want to build something. So then a team of brilliant architects came together and thought, what if we can put old houseboats actually on the land, because houseboats can rest on their own foundation and you don't have to dig. So when the biggest hurdle was overcome, we started to plan out the community. And basically what we did was we mapped all the resource flows on the location, And we started looking into how we could turn the waste streams into resources again. So what we have, for instance, on the terrain, our struvite reactor, which takes in the urine and turns it into struvite, which is a fertilizer for plants. We compost the black water, like the poop, basically. And we also have a greenhouse on site, which has an aquaponic system in which fish feed plants nutrients and plants clean the water for the fish. So this all became reality. And this is a picture from of the Keuvel from up top. You can see all these kind of houseboats which house offices for either sustainable or creative entrepreneurs. And there is the cafe on the top left, which you can see up close here, which basically provides the public functioning for the place. And here on the left and the top, you can also see the greenhouse with the aquaponic system. So that was the part about the built environment, but of course we do more than that. So one important part of our work is the program that we have. So we organize festivals, for instance, like the Make the World Great Again festival, which is now cancelled due to the corona crisis. But what we do, we basically combine a really nice program with wonderful music and nice musicians together with things that contribute to making a positive impact. So we also have we have a program about things like money or energy and food and trash. And we have the transformation tunnel, which ensures that you can walk on the jetty that you see on the left. And along the jetty, you can make sure to change your banks, your insurance company, your energy provider, and you come out of the tunnel having made a positive impact. And from, of course, the perspective of the cafe itself, our biggest impact is the food and drinks that we serve. Around more than 95% of our greenhouse emissions and more than 99% of our water use is embedded in the products that we serve. So we always try to look for sustainable products, look for the story behind the products and look at their impacts, and then optimize our menu for a positive impact. So that was the Keuvel. A second project that I'm now currently involved in is the Warre, which is a self-built housing cooperation, which is currently realizing 36 social housing and middle income rental units, completely made of wood, 5 floors high in the east of Amsterdam. And what we try to do here, basically with a group of people from which a lot were also involved in the Keuvel, which is a temporary project. We really wanted to solidify the lessons we've learned and put them into something we deemed important, and that has become the Warre, with owner structure that basically guarantees that there can be no speculation with these houses ever on the housing market. So it's all rental units, but all the renters collectively co-own the building, which makes sure that rents never get raised and apartments can never be sold. And basically you guarantee good quality housing for the coming 50 years with the added benefit that we develop the project ourselves. And because there's no project developer that needs to profit of the development of these housing units, we have a lot of extra budget that we can put into both the quality of the houses and the building. So you can see it's completely made of wood, and it has a front that includes nature in many different ways and promotes biodiversity. And we use the money to up the sustainable performance of the building. So we have now, I think, the highest energy performance of any social and middle income housing project in the Netherlands. And that's in short what I have been working on. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Joey. That was very interesting. And I think it's very inspiring to see that you can be so creative and setting up these 2 projects in the city of Amsterdam. And of course, we will know more about this later in the discussion. But let's move quickly to Socrates Schouten from the Waag and writer of the book, The Circulaire Economie.
Thank you, Laura. And thanks for having me here on this very beautiful program. Yeah, as it was introduced, I authored the book, which I have here, the circulaire economie with the subtitle about 4 years ago. And I'm happy to say that it finally starts getting outdated because the discussions that I tried to float in the book are now kind of becoming more general, as we also have them right about here. So I'm also sharing my screen, this one, and I hope it is entering into full screen now. So I work at Waag, an institution for technology and society based in Amsterdam for a couple of years now. And the work that we do is pretty broad. We have lots of different projects that try to further lots of societal debates where some technological element is present. Personally, my focus is mostly on the intersection between democratization, digitalization, and sustainability. So really where the topics of today intersect, but also have this element of how does digital development come into play. Amongst others, I do this from a research project. It's called Contemporary Commoning. So commons is also my, let's say, the prism I use in my work. I won't be able to go much in depth, but commons as a term has been very abundant for the past couple of years, luckily. So I think most of you are familiar with the term. And in this research, I try to kind of understand at this particular intersection how digital technologies are influencing the way we can re-understand commons in present society. Well, if we look at circular economy, we also at Waag do different projects about that. The main one is called Reflow, and it's doing lots of pilots in different cities on how to achieve circular regenerative cities, kind of along the lines as Electra discussed today. But I think part of it boils down to the question, how should we actually frame the circular economy or circular society? And I just grabbed a few different perspectives here. So first is to redefine what are we talking about, what actors and incentives are we actually looking at beyond maybe purely material and retail-oriented and production-oriented systems. But I'm also a strong believer in that we should be recoupling instead of decoupling. For those of you who know, let's say, the decoupling version of sustainability, I don't really believe in that we are able to decouple growth from impact on ecosystem, and we should rather focus on recoupling and re-embedding industrial systems. And thirdly, it's also about re-embedding those industrial systems into the more political civic realm. So that we don't see industry as something that's, let's say, in the margins of the city, but really bring it closer to the heart, but also put it under concerns of the civic realm. Well, let me use the remainder of my few minutes to talk a bit further about technology. Because technology is, I should say, really a major enabler of the circular economy, as it allows us to go about design, manufacturing, and retail in a much more intricate way and really navigate different and reroute certain streams of material. But at the same time, many people are also expecting too much from technology, and we are missing the point that local ecosystems are actually the key. Trust is often overlooked and also misunderstood. You know, you have different people thinking that, for example, the blockchain brings trust, which is actually kind of the world on its head. And worse, that we might also start to, that we're actually too slow to distrust certain big platforms with increasing dominance over material life, such as Amazon. So what I'm fascinated by, and this is really less hands-on than the previous two talks, but it is that the digital realm is rapidly transplanting the function of finance, of financialization, of commercial motives, or rather it's really increasing its range and softening its guise. So there has been a sort of public backlash against neoliberalism and financial capitalism. Also, major politicians have saying, yeah, we should have less of that. But at the same time, this digital is becoming really much pervasive and seeping through all of social life and also ecological life. So that's something I'm really interested by. And I think that's also a potential pitfall for our ability to really see the circular economy for what it should be. So I know my time is already up, actually. this is a piece of bananas. Let me add a few final notes about the donut city, because it was talked about by Electra. I do support the idea of a donut city. I think it's a brave attempt to actually reconcile social and ecological functions, but also to push back against the growth economy. I know that Amsterdam will face setbacks and actually will also end up in stalemates and find out that there's contradictions to be found here. But I think it's also one of the first attempts to really try and have that discussion about, can we imagine a post-growth city? And I think it's my job to look for those contradictions that stem more from the digital and technological realm, which are certainly to be found in the circular discourse, because it's really weighing in heavily on the technological discourse. And I think we should have a more social discussion, much as we had it today. And looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Socrates. And indeed, let's move quickly to the discussion. So I think all three talks were very inspiring, and it's really nice to see so much happening actually in the Netherlands and also beyond. I already see a lot of interesting questions coming in the Q&A, but we will save them for a bit later in the final Q&A. But please upvote each other's question if you see something that is really interesting. First, Olga and I have prepared a few questions to start the conversation and to link your initiatives to the concept of today that we're discussing today in the symposium, degrowth. So let me start with the first question. As we discussed earlier, in a nutshell, degrowth argues that we should actually rethink the fundamental assumptions and the values that we deem relevant in our societies in order to address the climate emergency timely. So my question then would be, what do you think we should value more, and what kind of assumptions should we challenge? Or maybe more specifically, what can the audience learn from your initiatives in this regard? Maybe Martine, could you start?
Yes, I could do that. Thank you. Well, I think we've all grown accustomed to the idea that everything is possible all the time for everyone and that everything can be bought. But it turns out that this is not true. We cannot all have everything or do everything we would like all the time. And I think we should learn to accept that there are limitations. From a Repair Café point of view, that the earth simply cannot provide all of us with new products every year. Nor do I believe that there is any need for that. I'm convinced that this throwaway society and lifestyle doesn't really make you happy. A Repair Café actually shows that repairing an old object actually can make you happy, to see the value in something which is already there, and to learn something about this product, how it works, and how you can restore the function with your own hands and some tools. And for many people, making a repair is an eye-opener. A successful repair can actually make you feel proud and strong and make you feel good about yourself. Like, I did this with my own hands. And this is a much more valuable experience, I'm convinced, than just going to a shop and buying something new. So doing something with your own hands and finding a solution and solving a problem, that is so rewarding, and it stimulates your creativity and it will make you more resourceful. And I think that our society will benefit when more people have that experience, and will be stronger as a society, more creative, more capable of solving our own problems. And I think that's the kind of mindset that we need for a sustainable future.
Yeah, thank you, Martine. That's very interesting. So it's all about also revaluing the skills that we have that we maybe unlearned in this growth society where we maybe keep on consuming. And yeah. I think that's a very interesting perspective. So Joey or Socrates, maybe Joey, maybe you could share how this actually works for you at the Waag, where you actually try to rethink the way that we live together or construct our houses.
Yeah, sure. So what I think in the Waag as well as in the Keuvel is that how we try to make our projects different is that we start reasoning from a different paradigm, and especially now when it is becoming more and more clear even to the large public that we are facing an existential crisis, that if you take that as like the basis, it changes everything that comes after. And in such a way, for instance, the Keuvel was built from the ground up with that as a leading argument. And Café de Keuvel was started with the founders. We all have a background in environmental science. So that was our starting point, and then all the rest came. And then you get a thing that is qualitatively different and actually starts working for the goals you set in the beginning. And the Warre as well, the goal was different from the beginning. We wanted to see how we could get rid of speculation on the housing market, how we could ensure safe, qualitatively high and fair housing for like forever. And if you use that as a starting point, then the rest will follow, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Joey. That's also super nice to rethink actually with what kind of goals we move forward. I think that is a very nice point. So maybe before we move to the next question, Socrates, I would like to ask you, so you discussed before that maybe in the donut model, there's this emphasis on technology, and that there might also be maybe more room for the social aspects. So do we need to rethink our maybe technology-focused way of thinking about solutions? Do you have a say on this?
Yes. Well, what I find really interesting is that there is a strong technology focus in a circular economy. So not so much in a donut. We did a series on what you call the donut and tech back in 2018, collaborating with Kate Raworth as well at Waag, trying to understand this intersection between those debates and see how our dependence on big technologies, which is sometimes on the foreground, sometimes on the background, is cutting off some trajectories that we think are worthwhile. You know, we are an institution for technology and society, and people often think, oh, Waag is like the internet and they like multimedia, etc. But it's always so that we want to embed technology in society, and society is actually the more complicated thing, right? Technology, certainly if you manage to have it follow where you want to go with society, then you're in a good position. But then society is really, the social innovation is the cumbersome part of it. So figuring out together what kind of world we'd like and how much effort we want to put into actually making the transition from where we are currently to something that looks like a donut, or however you want to frame it, that's really the challenge, and technology will follow. But in industrial policy, it's really like, oh, technology is really the big problem, and we should put all our focus on tech innovation. Luckily, we also see lots of shifts in this regard. So I think it's more and more understood that the mutual, how tech and the social reinforce each other and co-evolve, co-constitute each other is becoming more obvious, and also political discourse shifts toward understanding this. But then really figuring out what kind of politics should you put in place. Yeah, that's really a trick which fascinates us and drive our work, and we will not really solve it on a go, I think.
Thank you, Socrates. And my next question actually links with the politics and the context in which we all operate. So I can imagine that it could be hard to find compromises between the vision of circular society and values that inspire your initiative on the one hand, and existing environment on the other hand, in terms of legislation, growth imperative, market rules, consumer behaviors. So I wonder if all of you have to find compromises between the values that you put into your initiatives and this environment that you find yourself in. And do you have to conform to the capitalist system, or do you find opportunities to stretch and transform the system? So maybe Joey, you have the word first.
Okay, thanks. Well, I almost want to say that like in the projects we do, compromises maybe the essence of what we're doing, because you don't have infinite money and you don't have infinite time, and you would like to have both of them. But then what it boils down to is how do you prioritize your compromises? Basically, what would you like to give some leeway on, and what are you going to stand for? and you have to make trade-offs for that in any sense. And then like after that, you have multiple strategies that you can follow to kind of fight the system. The first thing is to work your way around things that are happening. For instance, with the Keuvel, an interesting part was that we have toilets that allow us to compost the black water streams. And there is legislation in the city of Amsterdam that says if you build an office space, you have to connect it to the sewer. No, wait, this is an example of, wait, sorry, I'm going to start. One of the things that we worked our way around was if you want to do a renovation of a boat, then you actually have to have a permit, and that takes 6 months to get, and then the whole project would be set back 6 months. So we talked with the municipality, and then we worked our way around it, and they said, well, if you renovate on the water, you don't need this permit, with a wink. And then we were like, okay, so we renovate on the water. So we put all the scaffolds on the water, we renovated all the boats, and only then we put them on the land. And that's like an example of how you can work your way around stuff in accordance with the municipality, actually. The other way to go about it is struggling and just struggle through the mud and try to be the first one to fix something, because then you create this like jurisprudence. You create an example that others can also point to and say, we want to do something like that. And that's when you have the toilets that I just mentioned. They have to be connected to the sewer system. And we didn't want that because we wanted to use our black water for the compost. And that was a really, really difficult legislative process, and it took us a lot of months. But now other projects that sprang up, also in the neighborhood of the Keuvel, wanted the same thing, and they could just go to the municipality and they say, well, we want to fix it like that. And then it was just immediately set in place. So I think that's the true strategies that we try to use.
Thank you. That's an interesting experience. And I would like to pose the same question to Martine. I think the idea of Repair Café clashes quite hard with this consumerist lifestyle that we have at the moment. So how do you find yourself, conforming or transforming the system?
Well, we try to transform the system by showing how much fun repairing can be. And like I said, that it can actually be a very rewarding experience. But at the same time, there is some compromises you will have to make. Like, for instance, I used to have a refurbished iPhone 4 until very recently. But in February, I had to replace it with a newer model because more and more apps didn't work on my phone. And I got the feeling that I was being, well, left behind or becoming obsolete myself. Like I couldn't do online banking on my phone, and I couldn't listen to podcasts, and I couldn't browse the web. So when you can't do that, then you're becoming, you're being a little bit left behind. And I don't want to place myself outside of society. So then to a certain extent, you have to move along. But so now I have a more modern smartphone. And that's, of course, I want to come to a situation when smartphones can be used for longer, and when it's not normal anymore that you have a new phone every couple of years. But that's not done on a moment's notice. So we just have to keep pushing and keep talking about it and making those repairs and inspiring people, and eventually hope to get the change going.
Thank you. Indeed, persistency is the key to change. And Socrates, I wonder if you would like to add anything to this, but I also have a bit of a different question to you. So we live in this COVID-19 pandemic at the moment, and it really highlights how our highly interconnected and specialized global economy is not working that well, and it's not resilient to the shocks that we have. So I wonder if in the post-corona world, there will be more value put to locally embedded practices. So if you could reflect on this.
Thank you, Olga. Yes, I think COVID is really a strong pointer to our global society having become too well, not maybe too much connected, but too intensely connected. So people flying around the world all the time, and goods and services also doing the same. I think we are the kind of audience that is sort of liking a few bits of the Corona crisis. I mean, it's of course there's horrible things happening, but at the same time, the air is beautifully clean right now. So and we should have a bit more of that, or actually less of what we had in some respects. But we have been very slow to go into this relocalization of manufacture. I mean, it's really very much en vogue, you know, to relocalize, but it's really all kinds of pilot projects, and we don't seem to be able to really step beyond the pilot level, which is a concern. It's being recognized. I think Europe wants to also to reshore some of the production that we have. But I think what maybe if you could allow me to bring back this point forward to the previous question, and also to a few that I glanced in the Q&A section, yes. and also allow me to for a very brief moment reshare my screen. I know this is not agreed with you, but I just had one slide too many. So I think the way that we try to tackle these issues is to open up the debate to include those concerns. So often we find ourselves being into projects that relate to technology, and then many of our clients and that we work with have an understanding of technology that's quite instrumental, and think, oh, this allows us to become more circular because it's technically able to do so. And over the time, we have developed the framework of the public stack, as you can see, I assume, which tears this application apart in lots of different layers. And often it's only the application layer that people get to see. So it's really your device, your iPhone, etc. And then all the other layers that support this or are more in the background are overlooked. And but we find that if we, let's say, talk about this kind of thing using a picture that you see, people think like, oh yes, but this is, I kind of knew this, but I wasn't able to really talk about it, or well, they see their perspective opening. And this is allowing people, and also some of the traditional stakeholders, to start acknowledging more and more that you know, also the application of digital technologies, whereas they claim to be more efficient and help us to become more granular in production, for example, have a high energy demand or material demand themselves, have still manufacturing going on in China, or locations with even worse labor laws, that in the end they are still driven by commercial values, or their governance system is not inclusive. So it's really, I think, at least what we try to do at Waag is to provide tools in which we can really talk about this, and also identify from, let's say, the application layer outward, the more fundamental questions. And it's working a little bit, but at the same time, yeah, we're so deep into this capitalist system that it will be quite far-fetched to overturn this on short notice.
Thank you, Socrates, for sharing your screen. That was very insightful, and the slide is very insightful. So that's a great addition to our discussion. Now we would like to extend the panel and to invite back Electra, Kirsty, and Martin to join us here to continue the conversation. We still have about 25 minutes to answer the questions that are coming in the chat. So if you could please get everyone back. But for now, I would like to address the question to Joey. One of the most popular questions to you was about the financial instruments that enable the housing project that you spoke of, and how the financial part of the project is consistent with the growth approach, if it is. Is financially your project sustainable or self-sufficient, and how maybe you combine this, you know, financial issue with environment or social issues?
Okay, sure. So firstly, the financial instruments that enable the housing project. So we partly have a mortgage and we partly have a fund, Participatiefonds Duurzame Economie Noord-Holland, a participation fund Sustainable Economy North Holland, that is giving us a loan and those two, and we have a crowdfunding, and basically the costs are covered with debt, and it's financially sustainable because we pay back all the loans we get over the course of I think 20 years. And then on to if these complement a degrowth approach. I would say right now, not so much, but there are definitely leverage points that could be used by policymakers for this. So for instance, in the housing, for the housing project, a really big problem for us was that all the big parties only want to give you money once the first, the first brick is being laid or the first pole goes into the ground. And we were really looking to find funds that would borrow us money for the run-up for this project. And if a municipality, the municipality of Amsterdam already has agreed to set up a fund like this, and the leverage point is that they can set conditions therein that complement the degrowth approach, that set base level of sustainability targets, base level of social targets or qualitative targets. And they can really do this with very low effort. You just formulate the conditions and say that you only get the money that we borrow to you, and you have to borrow them back. You have to pay it back. You only get that if you agree with these conditions. So I think this is a very good opportunity to enable to complement the degrowth perspective. And it's basically for free for the municipality to do this.
Interesting, thank you. But talking about the financial part, quite some questions came about Global South, because the developed countries, the rich countries, they do have finance to facilitate the transition towards sustainability, and in Global South, funds, but also other resources, labor resources, knowledge resources, not as available as they are here. So I'd like to address this question of Global South and Global North, and how circularity can be initiated there, for maybe Socrates first, but then also to Martin, who is coming himself from Global South. So yes, and if anyone else wants to jump in and add to the discussion, then please feel free to do so.
Thanks, Olga. Well, I think if we are to relocalize the economy, that will have implications for the level of integration of global economies. I'm going to give a very general, I think, comment here, which is that we can use some of that disintegration of the global economy, but then again, many countries in the Global South are still tied by debt relations with the Global North. So there's some marginal discussion, unfortunately marginal, about what is called reversed ontwikkelingshulp, reversed global assistance. Well, thinking back and forth in Dutch, but actually, so the point being that about what we give out to the third world in terms of handouts and all kinds of support is going back to us tenfold in terms of resource extraction and debt relief, or not relief, but debt payments. So this is kind of, I think, a big shadow that's hung over the global economy. So I think if we should enable the capability of those countries to get into the donut, so to say, this is really, I think, the first and foremost thing to tackle, rather than personally to say, here you have a donut and good luck.
Yeah. Speaking of donuts, Electra, maybe you'd like to add here something.
Yeah, I thought it's nice to, because there were some questions about the cities you have chosen are all already affluent, thriving cities, and how could you transfer this work to non-thriving cities or to developing work? And it's definitely in our mind how this can happen, but I would like to bring this layer that Kate brings. When we look at the donut and where the world is now, she says very nicely that we are actually all developing countries, because the countries that are having high levels of consumption, like the ones that we have chosen to work with, and we wanted to address the element of overconsumption and the element of the lack of awareness of impacts you have as a city by consuming all these products, which is something that hasn't been addressed. So we want, the affluent cities are overshooting the planetary boundaries of the donut because of their overconsumption. So they need to come within the outer circle to be in the safe and just space. Whereas the cities that are suffering with meeting the basic needs are coming inside of the donut, so they inside of the inner circle, so they also need to come into the green space. So in that sense, we are all developing countries. Some of us need to come from outside in, and some others from in out. So what it means for this program? Well, to transfer this work as it is now, the work of Amsterdam, Philadelphia, and Portland, it wouldn't be the same if we bring it to, let's say, some city in Africa or even in Athens, where I am right now. Indeed, these cities that we're working with are gearing up a mechanism of consumption that is very much responsible for the multiple impacts on social and environmental aspects globally. So the angle that we took there is really addressing this systemic barrier of overconsumption. What I like about the donut is actually that it will, by looking at this big picture, going to the other side of the world, we will see the other side of the same coin. So we would need to actually now make sure that in those countries where like the basic social needs are not being met, what kind of circular economy or other strategies, because circular economy is a means to an end. We can look at different ways. What kind of strategies do we need to bring there to make sure that we have the social foundation within the planet? And what does this imply in the interactions with the rest of the world? So the beauty is to understand that we are looking the same thing from different angles, so that we are addressing the same systemic issues, either from the global south or the global north. And with the global north, we are coming from the angle of consumption potentially. So from the global south, we will need to take other entrances into the same systemic transformation. So yeah, that would be my input in the whole reflection of how we can take this work to the other side of the world. And we are planning to do so.
Yeah, thank you, lecturer. And I wonder if Kirsty, because Kirsty, your work is also so much about consumption. So do you address this, the other side of the coin, and do you look also at environmental injustices and labor injustices? They go, hand in hand with high consumer lifestyles. So would you like to comment on that, Kirsty?
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally do any work in the global south, but I think one of the things that was going through my head as everyone was talking is that I work in the School of Geography and Planning, and my geography colleagues would be very fast to sort of jump in and say this whole global north, global south bifurcation is quite problematic in and of itself, because I live in a country now where we've had growing inequality for many years, for decades. We have, about 20% of children growing up in poverty. We have 10 years of austerity, the defunding of the public sector, and we're not doing really well. So to call us a developed country is a little bit problematic. So especially now at this moment in time as well. So, and also if we look at where the big sort of consumer growth is, it's in the Asian middle classes. So I think this kind of, yes, economies are very different. They come in very different flavors all around the world. But I think this kind of lumping together is not helpful at all. I think some other panelists have already made that point, really. But I just think from a consumption perspective, it's also true as well. It is not the rich global north and the poor global south. There are levels of consumption that are very similar. If you've traveled around the world, I always remember going to an airport in Lagos and seeing like some of the richest, blingiest people I've ever seen in my life. I wasn't expecting that. And you see that in Lagos and you see that in London. So it is something we have to, and it makes it more challenging, because what we're basically saying is, with, you know, every place and every economy, we almost have to start again and think, well, what is this? What, you know, and I think somebody made that point. You can't just drop in a model from somewhere else, because everyone has got a different flavor. Yeah.
Thank you. And now I would like to invite Martine to contribute to our discussion. From the point of view of you know, degrowth and consumption in the global south, but also degrowth is more than just our you know, habits of buying things, but also how we understand the world and us in the world. So there is this values of conviviality and spirituality that are in degrowth thinking that could be, you know, interesting entry point in the discussion between global south and global north. So could you please, Martine, share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I think actually, if anything, the global south, as Kirsty said, you can't just put a circular economy as developed in the north to apply in the south. In fact, the global south can bring so much valuable information for transforming of ways of understanding human relationships with nature, breaking that separation that we've created between humanity and the natural world. There's no such word as nature in so many traditional indigenous peoples, cultures, and therefore in the global south we have such a variety of discourses that are aligned with circularity that actually it should be much more inspiring and should get much more, I think, attention than they are getting now. We have the Buen Vivir in Ecuador and Latin America, or Suma Causai, as it is also called. We have radical pluralism. We have ecological Svaraj. We have ecological civilization. We have Buddhist economics. Really, the global south is actually perhaps the greatest source of inspiration for me right now when it comes to understanding how we can live thrivingly within the boundaries of the earth, because it allows us to re-question what it is to be alive, what are human needs, what are human aspirations, and to find a new form of realization that is harmonious both with ourselves, with society, and with nature. Yeah, so.
Thank you, Martine. That's very useful indeed. We can learn so much from countries that are, you know, in the global south, and not to think that we can transfer technologies, but maybe we can also transfer some spiritual thoughts and just understanding of the world that is not as prominent here on the West. But Martine, I was wondering, maybe you could answer the last question. Do you feel like you integrate those, you know, different perspectives in this initiative of Repair Café? And if you do any educational work, do you think it's important to promote certain values early on, yeah, to change our perspectives?
Sorry, could you rephrase that question?
Yes, I was wondering if you maybe, as our Q&A is coming to an end, and now we have to wrap up the event, and we were reflecting on the values that we can maybe something learn from the global south to implement it here on the global north. And I wonder, I think in your initiative you already use quite a lot of those values. So I wonder how you, how you see them maybe penetrating our societies more through initiatives like Repair Café.
Yeah, I think we should value the little things and just be happy with a few things. We don't need that many to lead a valuable, good life. So that's my point, that I would like to stress, that in many cases it makes you happier when you have little than when you have so much that you don't know what to choose anymore. So I would say that, well, let's just take a step back and see that we have more than enough already. We don't need more of many things.
Right. Are there any other final remarks that you want to make before we move on with our agenda? No? Okay, then unfortunately, I would like to say that our symposium is coming to an end and I have to close the Q&A. And I would like to thank again all the speakers for joining us. But don't go away just yet. We have another guest coming to welcome. Is Professor Ernst Worrell, leader of the new Circular Economy and Society Hub at Utrecht University. Ernst will share his reflections on degrowth and circularity. And after that, Dr. Giuseppe Fillola, Associate Professor of Social Change for Sustainability at Utrecht University and co-founder of